You're listening to episode 148 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practice from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Mike Nam speaks with us about his experiences as a Buddhist in the U.S. military and what prompted him to create the web presence for U.S. military Buddhists on Facebook. Secular Buddhism seems like an oxymoron, especially when we simply take the words themselves at face value, without any deeper understanding of what we mean. Military Buddhists might be another phrase that elicits a similar response. There are many servicemen and women in our armed forces that would describe themselves as Buddhist, and even some who do not may have an inclination to Buddhist-inspired practices. They come to this tradition sometimes as part of their personal family heritage, and sometimes as an adopted religion that may have occurred early in their lives or after already being in the military. However these men and women have found themselves as Buddhists in the armed forces, the simple fact remains: both are a part of their daily existence, and how those aspects contrast, blend, and work together is a challenge those of us on the outside can only guess at understanding. Mike Nam was in the Marines from 2000 to 2004, and from 2005 to the present is a medic in the California Army National Guard. Mike has been on 3 combat deployments, is currently in his 4th year at South Baylor University, and is the creator of the U.S. Military Buddhists page on Facebook. So, sit back, relax, and have a nice mulled wine, heavy on the cinnamon and light on the cloves. Merry Christmas, Clarence. Our guest today is Mike Nam. Mike, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, you're so very welcome. How's it going, everybody?
So far, so good, and I'm really glad to be speaking with you today because you've set up a page on Facebook called U.S. Military Buddhists, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today. But before we go into that, Mike, why don't you tell us about your background?
Okay. Well, my father is Korean and my mother is Vietnamese, and they're how could you say very Christian oriented. Because I don't know if you're familiar with some of the Korean Christians. They put Southern Baptists to shame sometimes. So I grew up in that tradition since I don't know since I was 2 years old, and basically, that's my first background.
I guess one piece of that I would ask you, Mike, is you being an Asian American, one would think, as I did, and you corrected me, is that no, Buddhism isn't actually a part of your upbringing. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, as an Asian American who comes from a Christian background with that.
Okay.
You mentioned it was a little more strident, shall we say.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Is there some particular reason that stridency exists?
I really I'm not sure, but but I know for the Korean culture is if they like something, they take it and they run with it. They put rocket boosters on and they just go. And that's like, and then if they like it, that's the only way. That's the only way possible to do anything.
Mhm. So,
And
based on that, then your upbringing is clearly you've taken a step over towards a Buddhist view of the world. How did that first come up?
oh, okay. Well, first, I'd like to share a bit about my military background.
Yeah, please.
I joined the Marine Corps in the year 2000, which was before the whole 9/11 thing happened. The recruiter basically said I could travel the world, I could have an awesome uniform, and I could get girls. So,
Sounds like a recruiter. Yeah.
yeah, I was 18 years old, and I was like, sure, why the hell not? Um, Everything with 9/11 happened, um, and basically, I was deployed 3 months after 9/11 happened. Um, so, so I deployed. I was an infantryman, and and of course, um, sometimes like we were required to take lives, and at that deployment, I was more like, just having fun. I thought I was fighting for my country, um, and so I really didn't think much of the mental consequences after. And then I came back, and then I just totally changed. At that time, not maybe not for the better. You could say it was PTSD. I was highly irritable. I was angry at everything, and I really didn't know why. I prayed every day. I read the Bible like every day. So after that, I had two more deployments after that. Um, but it was during my last deployment as a medic when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2004, and I became a medic with the National Guard. But I got deployed anyways. My luck.
Yeah, a lot of people's luck, as it turns out.
Yeah, exactly. And then it didn't really hit me until I was working at the emergency room. So that the last tour, I spent 6 months in the emergency room working as medic, and then 6 months on the combat convoys, where if someone were to get hit, then I'd take care of them, help call in the medical evacuation unit. Um, but there's this one time where it was we had a mass casualty of over 20 people in our emergency room, and we had about 8 beds. So it was a suicide bomber in the marketplace, and then they named me as the triage NCO, which that means is um, that when the medevacs they come to the emergency room with the patient. Since we were so limited on beds and resources, I had to the ones that were way too far gone and were about to die, I had to leave them to the side and let them pass on. Because I mean, it's what we had to do because for the ones that were borderline, that they may or may not, depending on what we do, I have to let them in first. So it was so surreal. It was one of the first times where I had, uh, I guess you could say, an out of body experience where I was thinking, but my body was just reacting. And I remember at one point I said, "Why the heck do we do this to each other?"
Yeah, yeah,
You and I at that point I came to the conclusion that it came down to at that point it was it's a jihad, so it was a religious war, and I was thinking like why are we killing each other? Because basically it came down to us saying that I'm right and you're wrong, and we go both ways and we kill each other over it, which is ridiculous. Anyways, so so after I came back from that deployment, I was still going through my PTSD issues. I thank goodness for my counselors. I love them to death. Um, but there was just still something missing. Like, I pray to God every day, and like I'm just like, please, please, like show me something. And then I was trying to like go to outside resources all the time. Like the only place I didn't look was inside myself. Yeah, it's almost like, you've experienced this before, and I'm sure many of the listeners have, you're trying to find your car keys, and then you look everywhere, and then you turn your house upside down, inside out, and you're frustrated, and they were in your pocket the whole time. There's a class called, basically, it's Meditation 101. And I'm sure you're familiar with this book. One of the required readings was Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. And then I read it, and I was in Santa Monica, and I was at a pizza shop, and I was just in complete awe because it's almost like um, everything that I do in life, like no matter what, I could find some sort of peace in there. And um, and then one thing I loved about um, um, the work and just one of the Buddhist principles, it's like I've for years I've been trying to repress my anger, totally suppress all the sadness and everything, and that if I just like basically hold on to it, like nurture it and not make myself feel wrong for feeling these things, then I was I was able to let it go more.
Yeah, the previous interview was that I did this morning was just talking about that idea that in the West, when we run into some kind of suffering, some kind of hurt, our tactics here tend to be avoidance, tend to be
Exactly. Yeah.
distraction, tend to be doing something else rather than this idea that Buddhism really goes into, which is direct engagement, the full knowing of
Yep.
suffering and that understanding.
Exactly. And then, when I'm sitting in the lotus position, and then it's like you are forced to confront that like head on because you have no other distractions, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror the whole time, and you're sitting down, and you're forced to do these issues, or to deal with these issues.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just impressed you can sit in full lotus position. That's impressive.
Well, it took about 3 years to do that. At first, I was like at the half lotus, and then and then 2 years later, I was able to do the full lotus.
Mhm. Good for you. That's awesome. So, Mike, is there a place right now? I know you're living in California.
Uh-huh.
Is there a place where you go to practice that's a traditional temple, or how does your practice take form? What kind of community support do you have outside of the military Buddhist stuff?
Okay, okay. Let's see. One of the community supports I do is, well, first of all, I have to start within my own friend networks. And then I basically asked around, and I was like, is there anyone that, you know, I have to ask around to see if anyone's interested in studying Buddhism, or like just any form of spirituality in general.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I actually have a Christian friend that's really open to Zen training because he says it helps him in his spirituality of his idea of God, which is I'm like that's awesome,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And and what else? I love going to Deer Park Monastery, which is one of Thich Nhat Hanh's monasteries. And just not a single place where I go to. I just, find stuff here and there on the web, and I go and check it out. And um, I don't know. I guess I'm one of the more non-traditional Buddhists where I'm not sticking to one methodology or school. Because I'm like, instead of thinking outside the box is like, just like for my training, like take the box and blow it up.
Yep. Yeah, I seriously, and the thing that is interesting about this is you're a Westerner. You grew up in the U.S. I mean, this
Yeah.
is your home, and your cultural context is very different than it may be for your predecessors, your parents, your grandparents, however far back it goes, as mine is with mine. I mean, we need to be practicing within whatever our own cultural context is.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I finally told my parents that, I became a Buddhist, if you want to call it that. I prefer maybe more spiritual, 'cause I don't like to put a label on it. But like all of a sudden, like they went crazy. I don't know. I think they're trying to do an exorcism on me. Maybe I'm not sure. There's lots of praying and lots of crying. Um, but actually, I was speaking to them 2 months ago, and like they're like, I just can't believe like the profound change it's had on you, Mike. I'm like, um,
Hopefully for the better, and yeah,
yeah,
guys
yeah,
notice that.
exactly. Because yeah, for me it was a really real gradual process. I mean, they've seen me in my heyday. I come back from deployments and I'd snap at them for no reason. Um, and then my mom she said, you know what, at this point whatever you're doing, just do it.
Good,
And
good for her. Good.
exactly. And then we talked about this, and she said like, okay, that's what works for you, and this is what works for me, and I'm sure like God won't object to that. And hearing that from her, I was just in shock and awe.
Well, it's wonderful to get that kind of support from someone who's so important to you in your life.
Oh, exactly, exactly. I love my mom.
Right. So let's talk for a bit about the U.S. military Buddhists, the Facebook page. What made you start that?
Okay, and actually, this may be funny and maybe I don't know, not so dramatic. I was in
Uh,
the shower,
uh,
and then like sometimes in the shower, I like to do like a shower meditation. I just close my eyes and just feel the water hit me, and then all of a sudden, like the name U.S. military Buddhist popped in my head. I was like, okay, so I quickly hopped out of the shower, and then I sat down and I was meditating on it, and I was thinking like, like um, there's not much of a support group out there for people in the U.S. military and that are Buddhist at the same time, uh, because um, because like it's gotten a lot better. We actually have um, uh, a handful, maybe about 20 Buddhist chaplains in the military right now.
that's great.
Yeah, and then the first one being Captain uh, Dyer. I forgot his first name. I don't want to say Wayne. That's a different guy. um, and and basically like his Buddhist services are just like I remember I saw a picture. He had about 150 soldiers in there. Um, well, well, basically, and then like I want to create the page just to get like dialogue going, to share our struggles with being spiritual, other than Christian, being in the military.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a double whammy right there because
Yeah,
you're for one thing you're Buddhist in the military, and just that idea of being a Buddhist and carrying a gun, as you and I were chatting before the interview started, that's kind of a challenge already on the Buddhist side. But then in the military side, being something that's not the standard, Judeo-Christian background, not
yeah.
being that your approach, that's another part. So have you had some? How have you dealt with some of that? Because that makes you a little bit of an odd man out in a couple ways.
Yeah, and actually, just for me personally, I know other soldiers have faced kind of a scrutiny, like others making fun of him being called hippie, and I've been called that a few times. Um, but like for me, my supervisors, it ultimately came down to that's great, but how, what's your job performance like?
Right, right,
So,
right.
which is an awesome thing because you're not being judged because of what you do during off duty, but on duty. Um, and actually, what I've seen maybe in the past year, I'm not sure if it's like the whole 2012 paradigm shift thing. Um, but a lot of soldiers have been asking me about Buddhist practice because during lunchtime, like for about 10 minutes, like I'd go in the corner and I'd do mindful eating. Like I'd just nothing but concentrate on the food. And then they just noticed that like some of them have seen my transformation, I guess. So I guess like they just had that near inevitable you know response with like how do you do it. um but like actually for the page I'm thinking about some of the responses I got at first, which was kind of surprising, but I should have expected it. um like I got messages like oh, like how could you be a baby killer and be Buddhist at the same time? You're not a true Buddhist.
Yeah. The That's the one true Scotsman fallacy is you can't be a real Buddhist if, and then it's whatever excuse to kick you out of the club.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, for me, it's at first, it was a tiny bit disheartening because, and then, but I tell them in response, hey, I'm in this service right now. I found Buddhism during this service. I still have time to go left. So, it's almost basically like, hey, I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a monk, a guru, or anything, but I'm just trying to just, to find my own peace and help others find their own peace.
Which is exactly what the point of this all is.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I've actually received some hate mail on my personal account, from my personal Facebook account. What do you call it? You know, some people say like, oh, like you're going to hell. Jesus is the true way, and all that good stuff. And I still believe in Jesus. I personally believe that there is something higher out there. Like I call it, universal consciousness, source consciousness. So I'm thinking like just like with the religions in general, it's basically they're we're striving towards a similar thing. We're just calling it in different names, and we had different cultures.
You know what I find interesting is that people are willing to take action and speak words that are in direct conflict with what they themselves know and expect their own religious tradition is about love and peace and all the rest of it. And they engage in such hateful activities to someone who is doing their best to
Exactly.
personify this practice of peace and mutual support and friendliness. It speaks more towards your practice than to theirs. So take
Yeah.
heart. You're
Thanks.
doing fine, Mike.
Thank you. And then actually, I just bought a book. I have yet to read it. It was by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's called Jesus and Buddha as Brothers. And then, so when I bought it, I dusted off my Bible, my King James version of the Bible. Um, like at first I was like, I should toss this, but I'm gonna, I thought, I'm gonna respect, this work and just, leave it. And then like what Jesus said was like nothing about nothing but love and compassion and what else did he say? He who has not sinned cast the first stone. Um, and then like like it's almost like he was like the Buddha radical in the day compared to the Jewish traditions that were there at the time.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and you can find that kind of radical social change in ideas in Buddhist tradition as well.
Yeah,
Buddhists
yeah,
bringing the idea and challenging the Brahman position of privilege is the same as today, as I am an atheist challenging the Christian position of privilege, and yet at the same time actively participating in how it's helping people's lives. It's why we do these interfaith dialogues to help grow that and support that as people. What can we do to be more kind and compassionate to one another?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then like, for me it's like, like why should I judge you for believing what you do if it's not hurting me, you're helping other people. So, why am I gonna, chastise you like every chance I get?
Yeah, yeah. So you've had this is some of the downside of having started the Facebook page. What are some of the positive things that have come out of starting the U.S. Military Buddhist Facebook page? Because I saw some really nice commentary on that from other military personnel who have found your page. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've received a lot of responses. I was just telling you about the few negative ones. There's a lot of responses like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one out there." And then even people have messaged me personally asking if there were resources on their base. So I had to do my own networking, and then I, helped to connect them to resources on their base. And then I said that if there's anyone local from me, like I'd be glad to like go to Starbucks and we could chat and like help support each other. Um, there's this one guy. He told me before he found the page he was on the verge of suicide. There's this guy that he's been through 4 combat deployments, and he felt that no one could understand him. And then I guess he found myself and just the support of the members of the page in general. Um, at first I told him like, first, get professional help,
Good for you. Good.
and then and then he did that, and then I actually I bought a few books for him because he said he was low on money, so I bought a few books for him that might help him, and then I sent them free of charge, and then he messaged me, and then he said like, thanks for saving my life, and yeah, and then just for that one person, like the whole making of the U.S. military Buddhist page uh, was worth it.
Yeah, and I see from as of this recording, you've got over 1,700 people who have liked it, and it
Oh gosh,
continues to grow, which has got to feel pretty good.
yeah, it does. Like I'm clicking on the page right now. Yes, you're right. Um, yeah, it does because basically like you know it does make me feel good because like I think Buddhism is all about taking responsibility, bad and good. So I'm glad to take some responsibility and good for once in my life. um, and and yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm kind of awestruck for a second that you mentioned that number. I had no idea it would grow to that much. I was thinking like 300, 400 people at the most. I would have been like glad and happy, but and then just like I've received responses like I'll just put up encouraging status updates here and there, some questions just to discuss about different things. And then I'd much rather like have dialogue than like us shoot each other for trying to discuss these ideas.
Well, and that there are so many people who have found this page and are actively participating on it
Uh-huh.
shows that not only is there a need, there
Mhm.
is an appetite for this, but that this is going to become my expectation, because
Uh-huh.
this is the same thing we've seen in secular Buddhism, is that your work is going to become a hub for that kind of support and that kind of community building, which is what you're describing for people who are in the military, who are Buddhists, who struggle with some of the challenges between their ways to approach life and yet being part of a military complex. So you're providing that, Mike. So keep going with that work.
Thank you, exactly. And then one thing that I think that a lot of the public like about Buddhism in general is that at first the Buddha encourages you to have critical thinking. He says something like, I'm paraphrasing, don't believe anything, even if I have said it. Basically, to
From the
that's
Kalama Sutta is through your own experience. Check things out for yourself.
exactly. And then like my scientific nerdy mind loves that because
Exactly, exactly. Well, the guest today has been Mike Nam. And again, the site which I will be linking on the episode page for this episode is on Facebook. It's U.S. Military Buddhists. Mike, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it and keep up the good work.
no, it's been an honor and a privilege for me to be interviewed, and you're welcome.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at secularbuddhism.org, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizan Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are also linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.